Scaling an agency or any service-based business is always going to be hard because you're dealing with people. The team members that you got to hire and keep happy, the clients that you need to get and deliver for. Dealing with people is always going to be more difficult than dealing with software or with physical goods. But that doesn't mean that it's impossible or that it's a bad business to scale. And so in this video, I'm going over the 4 key mistakes that I see from the financial side that are keeping these agencies or service-based businesses that we work with stuck or just struggling or just making it even harder than it needs to be. And so this is not going to be a basic clickbaity video. We are actually going into the weeds and we're going to really uncover these mistakes, and I'm going to tell you exactly what to do about them. So if you just want to have some light watching, then this is not the video for now because we are going tactical. So let's dive right in. So the 4 mistakes that are capping your agency's growth. Here we go. First, what we just covered here. Agencies are always going to be hard. What makes them such an interesting business model is that they actually start quite easy when it's just you as a freelancer getting some clients, hiring some contractors, very easy to get cash flow. It feels like an amazing business in the beginning. But then when things start to grow, you have now 10 more people on your team, you got like 20, 30 plus clients. That's when we often see agencies slow down because the founder often is not equipped yet with the right skills or the right systems or the right structure to actually manage all these people who all have their own demands, all want races, all want time off. That is when this slowdown often happens, where things just become exponentially more difficult and growth kind of stops, and especially the profit just starts to stall, no matter whether revenue grows or stays flat, because every bit of growth will often just require more people, more management layers now, more software, more tools, and that is where agencies can become very annoying, but doesn't mean that you can't scale one. And so in this video, we're going to cover exactly that. A little bit about us. I run a CFO firm for agencies and service businesses. I've now audited over 100 agency P&Ls. We currently have over 70 million in annual revenue that we cover as a CFO. And over these years, what I've seen is that more leads won't necessarily break your ceiling if you haven't fixed these things first. Because if you haven't, then more leads are just adding more complexity, more hires, more managers, and you're just going to stay stuck, be even busier, but not actually break through and make more money. So with that, mistake number 1. This is a pure financial one, and it is confusing profit for cash. And so, of course, if you just think of it from a high level, it is super obvious. But in reality, there's a lot of nuances here that I see many agencies get stuck on. That's when a quote like this, I got this literally from a sales call, and that is where he was confused. Like, accountant, was it like, hey, your P&L shows your profit, but he was like, well, my bank balance went down. How can we be making a profit if I have less cash? That is just the confusion that happens throughout the month for many agency owners. And here's some of the reasons why this happens. And so we're going to go tactical here. First example is the uncollected invoices. Again, such an obvious example, right? But we see this all the time, especially if you have just a sheet where you track like the clients that you have and the invoices that you've sent out. Very rarely, even at a 7-figure level, do I see agencies that properly track their unpaid invoices in a clean way and actually look at this. And so what they see is that like, hey, we've sent out all the invoices. We have all these clients that are supposed to pay us. We're supposed to do 100K plus this month. But what you don't actually track is that a big portion of that is still uncollected. And then, your bank won't move because of that. You think you're doing all this revenue, but you're feeling broke because your bank isn't showing it. And yeah, if you dive in, you can like logically see it's like, oh, it's because these clients haven't paid. But when you have 100 other things to do, not actually having a detailed AR aging report is just like a bottleneck for you because you don't actually know which clients are late. And almost every time when we set this up, there's clients that have clients that are like 80 days late, 50 days late, and they're just working for free. There's thousands uncollected and they don't even track it. And so that's why it's like, they tell themselves they make a lot of money, but in reality, they're collecting a lot less, especially when you get over 20, 30 clients. This becomes a major issue. Even if you use like Stripe auto charge, these things fail all the time. And if you're not actively checking it, actively marking things off, actually seeing if all clients pay, I guarantee you are working for free on some clients, or you're just funding them, in the hope that they pay later. So very important, get these uncollected invoices, keep them in check and really know what's going on. Example 2, the opposite scenario, a paid in full. This is a big trend I see now in agencies. Everyone's trying to get like 3-month PIFs, 6-month PIFs, really collect all that cash up front. And it's great, even if you have to give a little discount, I'm all for PIFs. The issue is that no one actually tracks this properly now. And so what we see is they just, hey, cool, 36K cash came in this month. Now looks amazing. They think there's a lot of cash available. And that's it. They just see this one massive month. And then that's how they treat it. Like, cool. Hey, this was a great month. Next month, nothing. And so in some scenarios that I've seen, it's like they even literally just use this cash for whatever. They take it out, take it out of the business as like, hey, there's a lot of cash, let me take a distribution. Or they invest in some courses, coaches, they increase their ad spend. But what they don't see is that the costs are still going to come. You still need to pay your team for those 6 months that the work has to be delivered. The tools are still need to be paid. If you have any UGC costs or whatever, there's still costs to come. And so we've seen many cases where PIFs actually can really hurt you if you don't plan for this. Oh, very important. This is called accrual accounting. Tell your bookkeeper or just message me, and then make sure you have this set up, because the downstream effects of miscategorizing PIFs is just really annoying. Even things like if you want to know your average retainer, your churn rate, your lifetime value, if you're just tracking it as one massive payment, it's all going to be messed up. So you want this to be properly tracked, and that's the answer. Don't treat a 36K PIF as a 36K inflow. Really make sure you set it aside in a separate bank account if you want to keep it really simple, and then just draw from that over the coming months. Don't treat this cash as yours if you actually want to stay on top of it. Last one, personal expenses. This one I'm going to keep a little bit shorter. Very obvious. So many agencies, they have their profit, they have their P&L, they think they're making a lot of money, but they're also using their bank account as a little bit of a gray area where they're taking cash out. A trip they put on there, hotel they put on there, Airbnbs, some shopping they put on there, dinners all go from the business account. Even if you categorize this properly on your balance sheet as an owner drawing, not as an actual expense for your P&L, even if you do that, you will have this big disconnect between what you are tracking as your profits and how much cash you should have and what is actually in the bank account. And so this, again, time and time again, we see that founders who do take out a lot of cash, even sporadically, are just always confused and they don't have actual confidence in the numbers because owner draws are not properly tracked. And so the answer here, track it, even if separate. So have like your real business, how much operating profit are you making as a business? And then after that, you should still track everything you're taking out. Whether you want to treat it as a business expense for write-offs, or if it is just a personal expense that you just use the business card for, you want to track that so you can reconcile your actual cash balance. So very important, get that in there. If you don't, right? This is a big mistake because it caps your growth by you not actually being able to make the big moves that you need to make to get to that next level. And so what we see is like, key hires, especially like the management hires or a big sales investment that you might want to make, just get delayed because you don't actually trust the numbers. There's too much friction. You're just not making these moves that you need to be making because you don't actually know. It's like, hey, like cash is kind of low this time. I'm just going to hold off on this new hire. I'm not going to do this, like get this manager. I'm just going to keep doing the work myself. You're just not actually going as fast as you could be going. Plus, if you ever do need funding, if your books are a mess, like no bank is going to give you your funding. So this caps your growth in these ways. It slows you down because you don't have the confidence to move fast and know what the right step is to take, and banks won't give you funding when you need it. Then, mistake number 2, treating all clients the same. This is one of my biggest pet peeves in the agency space, and it is that everyone is just looking at total revenue. It's like, hey, we're doing 50K, 100K, 200K, but we're not actually looking at how this amount is broken up. And what you see is that compared to any other industry, that is just ridiculous that we don't look at that. If you look at an e-com, even if they have to estimate it, they have a very good idea of the unit economics. So they know per order, per product, like how much did that go for? What were the COGS? What was the shipping fee, the processing fee, any return reserves they put in, any ad spend they might want to allocate for their contribution margins. They know their profit on that order. And that is how they can actually compare different products very well. They can see if are they scaling profitably, can they spend more on ads? You need to know the data. Then if you look at agencies, we're just looking at like, hey, cool, we signed a client. As long as I pay my team less than that, I'm making money. I'm good. Which, up to a certain point, it does work like that. It's very simple. But one, is it efficient? Are you actually, knowing what's going on? Could you be more profitable? For sure. But also, once you start to get a bit bigger, you now have management teams, you have more operating costs, you might want to invest more into AI. All of a sudden, you have no clue. Like, hey, are these clients actually getting more efficient? Am I making more money on them? Or if you have multiple clients, which client should I actually focus on? Are clients in this industry far better than this industry? If you're doing Google and Meta ads, which service line is actually making me more money? Because how much time are we really putting in? And so it's like just crazy to me that almost no agency knows this. And like, here's what we see with our clients. So these are literally numbers I just pulled from some of our dashboards. And I'm not lying here. Like for these clients at all sorts of different levels, 100K a month, 50K a month, 250K a month, and 500K a month clients, these were real numbers. Like just a smaller selection, of course. But like every client had clients they were losing money on. Like actually losing. Now, granted, this was often because of referral fees that may have taken into account, or just like in the onboarding period, it takes a bit more time. And so for most clients, the majority sits more in this like 20 to 30 to 40% range. if they're like bad clients. But still, it is so common that you'll have some clients that you're literally losing money on if you really take all the costs into account. And then some clients that are just ridiculously profitable, like 80%, 84%, like 81%. And so if all of your clients were like this one, imagine how much more money you'd be making. Imagine how much better your life would be. Because like for these clients, these bottom ones, you're still got to hire more people. They're probably not having a lot of fun. They're over delivering. They're underpaid because like you literally don't have the money to deliver on these clients. And so it's just all so much harder because you don't know actually which client is the bottom one, which client is the top one. You know, maybe intuitively you know, but imagine if you could just see exactly which client is this bottom one. You can have a chat with them. You can figure out like, hey, what needs to change? Can we change something on our delivery side? Or do we need to change the pricing? Do we need to change the scope? Because you can't run a business if half your clients are in the red or yellow here. So important, like start to look at clients individually and take action on it. Don't just obsess over adding more clients if you don't know this. Because again, it will just result in you not being able to afford the hires that you need to make. And so especially the ones where the founder is stuck, you know, they don't have a management team, those are always victim of this, where it's like they think they can't grow, they think they have to do everything themselves, they can't imagine hiring managers and stepping out because they're just over delivering their clients and they can't even see by how much. And so that's why you lose your time, you're not hiring because you're busy in these low margin ones, and even your competitors will just outgrow you because they can afford a higher CAC. So if you're running ads, so you're paying referral fees or whatever, if you can figure out which clients are good and make sure all of your clients are at least 60%, you will just be able to afford a much higher CAC and still make a profit, and you'll just grow much faster and outcompete the other agencies. So that was mistake number 2. So important. And as you see, I'm quite passionate about this. Like you need to figure this stuff out. Then number 3, doing work below your hourly rate. This is also a fun one in the agency space because so many guys I speak with, they're just like, oh, I need to keep my margin about 50%, 60%, you know, whatever margin they're currently at, they just refuse to go below that. But what they're missing is that actually high margins are just more often than not a sign that you're still doing far too much work. You know, you're probably doing all of the sales, all the marketing, you're still involved in so many little different things. And that is why your margin is so good, because you're just, you know, taking the hit personally, and as a result have a very low hourly rate. And so like asking you what your like profit is per hour that you work, that is like a far more important metric to focus on than just your profit margin itself. And so let's see exactly why. Because first, indeed, the math here is very simple. Just take the profit that you're making. Don't look at like how much you're taking home if you leave profit in the business. Like really look at the operating profit of your business. And again, do look at mistake number 1 and like make sure this is your real profit. So if you had a big piff, don't say like, hey, this month I made so much money, whereas actually that's the profit for the next month. So like get a clean profit number, see how much you're making, see how many hours you worked, and see your hourly rate. Then look at your calendar. More often than not, you'll see plenty of things at like a $20 an hour that you could just easily outsource. And so this should be the number that you're looking at. Because if you just think about it, your hourly rate is your ceiling. And so if you're stuck at this 200 hourly rate, and if you don't change anything, it will be impossible for you to make more money at a certain point because you only have so many hours. And so if we've calculated that like for every hour that you work, that's worth now roughly 200. Unless you actively change something in what you're doing, you will never be able to make more than that. Only by maybe working more hours, but at some point you can't work more hours or you don't want to. And so you're capping yourself by doing tasks that are below your hourly rate. And so that is really the ceiling you have to jump. Like every time you get something off your plate that is below your hourly rate and you put something back that is at or above your hourly rate, that is how you can break that ceiling and how you will make more money. If you don't grasp that concept, you will just always plateau because there's only so many hours that you have. If you're not doing valuable things, it will never accumulate to a higher profit number. And so how do you do this? You know, there's plenty of videos on that. What I like to do is just audit my time, see like, okay, which tasks were actually good, which ones were bad, and what was my hourly rate, and just categorize that and then try and replace all the bad stuff. So if you're sending your own invoices, if you're doing your own tracking in a sheet, if you're your own setter, these things can easily be replaced for something that's far lower of a cost than your time as a founder will ever be. So very important to do that. And then of course, that is your goal, that every block on your calendar is something above your hourly rate, even if it means in the short term, sacrificing some of that profit so that you can now grow into it and then unlock a higher ceiling. So mistake number 3, get this hourly rate under control, figure out what's going on, figure out how you can raise it, because that is your ceiling. So that's why it's capping your growth, because you're doing far too much that is below it, and that is just literally costing you money because it's just misallocating of your time and of the resources, the opportunity cost that you have. Then last one, Mistake number 4, relying on broken spreadsheets. Gosh, this one, just 90% of the agents I speak with, they have something like this in place. Just a spreadsheet, usually per month. They just put the stuff in there. Someone or their VA, their assistant, puts the stuff in here. They don't really look at it. It's just there. And that's it. There's nothing they do. And so like when all these questions come up, who deserves a raise? When can you afford to hire? Which clients are actually costing you money? Can you take more money out of the business? You don't have a real way of knowing what's going on. Like how will you see if someone is overpaid or underpaid based on what they're doing? Or like, the issues we talked about before, if a client hasn't actually paid yet, what is the real impact of that? If it's just a messy spreadsheet, you're never going to be able to answer the questions that come up every single week. And so what it can look like is just something like this. And this is just a little snapshot from the dashboards that we have, insights that are just given to you, telling you exactly where to focus on. But you're seeing like the real numbers, the runway, concentration, how the team is utilized. So you can already see it's like, hey, the senior AMs and the AMs, they're like at the higher threshold of utilization. We probably need to hire here. Whereas the juniors and designers, these can definitely take on more work. They're not fully utilized yet. The margins by service line. You want to see it in this level of detail so you can actually like act on it. Because if you don't have the data, so all the points we discussed today, if you don't actually have a way to see any of this, you're just going to be making decisions based on whatever feels right in the moment rather than what is actually true and what's actually there. And so that is a big reason why many plateau is, again, because they can't see the numbers. They make some good decisions, some bad decisions. They hire too early, hire too late, pay too much, pay too little, and then pay the price 3 months later and they have to redo it. And so just having the numbers, really understanding them is such a big differentiator between you being able to confidently take the right actions to grow or by just constantly being busy and not actually knowing what's going on. And so to end it, ask yourself, of these 4 mistakes that we covered, how many are you guilty of? Take that time, think through it, see what you can do to actually fix them, and then think about what impact that may have. And as always, if you want some help with this, you can just click the link there in the description. You can have a call directly with me. We do everything when it comes to the finances. If it's a stuff that it's not being done right now, like the bookkeeping, the invoicing, the tracking, or if it's a stuff that you want but you don't do yet, like the dashboards, like the strategy, like the CFO work, you can just chat with me. I'll happily talk through your agency, share what we do, and then if that's the right fit, we can take it from there. So I hope this video was useful. Take the time to go through this, and I'll see you in the next video.